Welcome to the Business Performance Podcast, where we feature expert thought leaders and cover their best strategies, stories, and advice that you can use to successfully mature your own business performance. Now, here is your host, business coach, Henry Schneider. Hello, everyone. This is Henry Schneider with the Business Performance Podcast, and today it's my pleasure to talk with Kurt Donnell of Freestar, which is the #1 company on the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing companies in the United States. And they've got phenomenal growth over 3 years of almost 37,000%, which is incredible. So Kurt's the CEO. He's been with Freestar for the last 15 months. So welcome.
Thanks so much, Henry. Appreciate you having me today.
Okay, so I always ask everybody when we start out if you could please give a little background or describe your company, Freestar, the customers and services that you provide, etc. So give everybody context of what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. We help publishers monetize their website as a managed service. So basically, we allow the content creators to focus on that, driving audience, producing great content, while we take care of kind of the advertising technology piece and monetization. Over time, the way that ads have been sold on the internet have become increasingly complex, and it's done in a real-time auction. So in milliseconds, anytime when somebody goes to a website, we run an auction from anywhere from 10 to 15 different bidders, get the price back for that ad for that specific user at that time, and display it in less than a second. We then take care of collecting all the revenue from all the different revenue sources, and then write the publisher a check at the end of the month. It really lets them simplify their operations, and again, as I mentioned, focus on the thing they're best at, which is the content side of things.
So how has COVID-19 impacted that? Is it you seeing more because everybody's home shopping or what?
Sure, we've certainly seen volume increase. There's a lot of people glued to their computers, even more so than usual. That said, there's been a lot of advertisers that have dropped out of the market. So we've seen rates fall, unfortunately, as you would imagine. Travel, auto to a certain extent, some luxury goods have really quit advertising altogether. And so we've seen rates fall down, just competition going away. Volume is up. So net, we're still in a pretty good spot as a business.
Okay. All right. So given that you've had 37,000% growth over 3 years, how is that even possible? What happened? How did that happen?
So I joined last January, as you mentioned, but I've known the co-founders really since they started this business, and they set out to do something a little bit different in this market. Historically, there have been a number of companies that have helped other websites monetize, but it's usually a publisher that has a big website themselves, and they'll kind of give some scraps from a direct sales standpoint to these other sites that are part of their network. Freestar set out really to represent the publisher. Our motto and really one of our big core values is publisher first. Our business is a revenue share model, so we only win when our publishers win, and we've only set out to do everything in the publisher's best interest. I think approaching it from that view, where typically publishers have been at the bottom of the food chain, where it goes advertiser to an agency to an SSP, publishers taking the scrap by giving them more control of the auction, shifting the auction dynamics in their favor, bringing more competition, and letting even mid-sized publishers operate at an enterprise level has really been the key to success. And certainly over the course of the last couple of years, really doubling down on customer service and really custom white glove solutions has helped drive the growth.
Okay, thank you. Now, I always ask everybody I interview about quality, because quality is a very broad term. So what does quality mean to you?
Certainly the publishers that we work with, there's some folks that do a similar service to us that tend to work with kind of longer tail blogger sites. We've really focused on mid-tier to enterprise publishers, Warner Music, Barstool Sports, JCPenney, Fortune Magazine, folks like that. And then a number of sites that are maybe more a little utility or a game, like a solitaire site, for instance, or some typing sites that are very, very large. We've tended to get sites, fewer bigger sites than long tail, which has been one element of the quality there. And then in terms of internal quality, certainly our technology is something that we are very, very proud of. And I mentioned earlier, but customer service is something we really hang our hat on. We kind of steal the Zappos line. We're a customer service company that happens to do ad tech.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are some of the biggest misconceptions out there when it comes to quality and working with your clients?
I think there has been a big focus on growth for the sake of growth over the years and not necessarily growing the right way. I think that's another element of quality Our company's bootstrapped. We've been very successful, solidly profitable. And I think there's an element of, particularly in a world where people are raising tons of capital, just going to chase deals for the sake of it. And the quality of a company is somehow based on its revenue growth, which is sort of silly to hear from a company that was number one in the 85,000 because of revenue growth. But we've done it by going to get good deals and not just chasing revenue for the sake of it, and finding quality people as part of that. Not just somebody who's got the great resume, but somebody that's the right culture fit and then is going to be a long-term contributor to the business. So I think there's a lot of sort of subtle things that go into quality where you can go chase the wrong things, whether it's the bad deal because it's a big revenue number but it's not profitable, or somebody that's got the great resume but maybe is going to be a jerk. We try to make sure that we're always doing the right thing all the time.
Okay. So that brings up another point is, are you funded by VC, or have you just been able to get the growth and through acquiring customers? Nice.
Yes, it's been really organic. The two co-founders raised a very small friends and family round, which has already been returned to those folks with a nice gain on that investment. And it really has been bootstrap, just sort of growing word of mouth. We haven't done a ton of advertising. Just really in the last year, we started doing anything on kind of the marketing front. To folks like you a little bit and just get that name out there. Obviously, the Inc. news was very beneficial, but it's been a very organic growth over time. Nothing too crazy.
Okay. All right. So now when you're trying to work with your clients, what are some of the fears they have about coming to you?
Sure. It's an interesting business model where a lot of the folks that we work with have either handled this internally historically, or at least tried to handle it internally historically. And with that, we're kind of collecting all the revenue themselves. Our service, we sort of take over everything, including revenue collection. So I think there's a little apprehension at times where we're sort of like, give us the keys to the car, we promise we'll drive it very well, and we'll write you a check at the end of the month, and we'll take care of everything. There's apprehension whenever sort of money's flowing through different pipes. And at the end of the day, we make it so much easier for folks because we're not chasing down checks from our fees. So ultimately, we make life a lot easier. But I think there's an apprehension anytime you put somebody else in control of the revenue of your business. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing to overcome.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so from the Freestar perspective, even though you've grown very rapidly and you got this phenomenal growth, do you have any perceived obstacles that might be preventing you from continuing that trajectory?
I think it's just always making sure you have the right people in the right places and hiring at the right times. It's sometimes tough to anticipate exactly where things are going to be and when is it good where you take people and you've got people at capacity or maybe that 5% extra capacity and then you hire, when sometimes you should probably get out in front of it if you know or have a feeling there's going to be an onslaught. Onboarding is an example. Our business development team's been doing an amazing job right now, signing aside some number of days or weeks. And so we want to make sure we got the account management out in front of that. And so managing the hiring portion of it, I think, is something you always have to make sure you're doing and being thoughtful. We're very lucky to be one of the companies that is still hiring pretty aggressively during these challenging times. So I feel very grateful about that, and obviously awful for the folks that have been impacted.
So how are you finding people then? Are you going like through the job boards, or there's other channels that you're going to try to get qualified people?
Yeah, we have a lot of internal referrals. We've really tried to put together a dream team of some of the best and brightest across our industry, from large publishers or other ad tech companies, people from the demand side. And so they often have very good relationships with folks. Obviously, our growth has given us a little PR, and so LinkedIn has been very good to us. LinkedIn is probably one of our biggest marketing channels, which sounds kind of funny, but it's worked really well for us. Anytime we hire someone new, we can put a baseball card, if you will, of them on LinkedIn. And so I think people have seen that growth and the kind of level of talent. And I think it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You hire talented people, more talented people want to come. And obviously, at this point in time, there's unfortunately so many people that have been taken out of jobs here recently that we've had quite an inbound interest. But I would say it's primarily word of mouth.
Okay. All right. So now that brings up another interesting point, is that you said you're still hiring aggressively now. So now you're more remote than you were 6 weeks ago. So how are you onboarding somebody here completely remotely?
Sure. So our company's been about 60% remote even before this happened. We're headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, have about a third of our folks here. We've got an office in New York, a team in LA, and then we're sort of spread out all over the country. And going back to what I just said about hiring the best and the brightest, we've got folks from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine. And so we've had a very remote culture where video chat has been in every meeting for a long time. So it was a pretty easy transition for us to go from, mostly remote to completely remote. I would say onboarding is one of those things we did still try to do some element of in person. I think there's just that human connection you build with people when you're sitting down with them. I would say one of the things I'm going to take out of this crazy thing is the creative ways you can connect with a remote team. And so I think I'm going to make that one of the things I learn out of this crisis. But I do think onboarding works a little more smoothly in person, but we made it work. We had 2 people start yesterday. We had somebody start last week, and you just got to be very dedicated to making sure everything's done on video, maybe a little more thoughtful in kind of the planning out process of that and scheduling. You need to talk to Susie and Sally and everybody kind of at different times throughout the week so they get the flavor, but then also have time to soak things in.
Okay. So last week I participated in a business roundtable put on by Forrester. And one of the questions they were asking is about productivity. And it seems that everybody on there was saying productivity has increased with working remotely, which to me doesn't make sense, a whole lot of sense. But have you seen something like that?
In all honesty, I think it's a little bit of a false positive right now because people are locked in their house and all they can do is work. So I personally worked remote for a couple of years before I took this job. I was traveling a lot, but when I wasn't on the road, I was at home. And I will say it is very nice to be able to sort of roll out of bed, grab a shower, and automatically be at the desk versus, get around, go commute for 30 to 45 minutes. Same thing on the back end. You gain an hour and a half in your day. There's an element of that. But I do think that right now, there's nothing else that you can do. So I think people are just working a lot.
Yeah, and I think what it is too is that, when you work in the office, people kind of stays that 8-hour time block. But when you're working remotely, time passes and you don't know, you probably put in more than 8 hours. You waste more time too, but
I think it cuts both ways a little bit from the office. There's a few less distractions at home, I will say, other than, I guess, kids and dogs here and there. There's less of the, hey, can you come jump on this call or whatever it is. That said, you lose a little bit of the plopping down at the end of the day in somebody's chair and just kind of shooting the breeze and, the brainstorming that sometimes comes out of that. So I think there's puts and takes. That part doesn't happen as well virtually. I think you can have that happen if you've got a good in-person relationship to begin with, and then sort of translate that remotely. And thankfully, we had that, coming into this in a lot of ways, which was good. But yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. Less distraction sometimes, and maybe a little less just random ideation.
Yeah. All right. So so could you tell us a little bit about your backstory? I know you started out in law school. So how'd you go from law school to being a president of a marketing company?
Sure. So started out my career as an M&A attorney at large law firms. Realized very shortly into that it was not my calling in life. Did have the chance to work for several large law firms, and the last financial downturn got some real estate experience, oddly. I've done a host of different commercial things in the legal context, which sort of set me up for realizing I wanted to switch over to the business side. So I was at law firms for 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. Then had the chance to go in-house to a digital media company that was getting spun out of a different company and needed to kind of build a new management team. So came on as the general counsel of that company, but then pretty quickly took over the business development team in a couple months, and then was running audience development, corporate development, did a lot of M&A, on the business and legal side in that role, and ultimately kind of ended up in a COO-ish position at that company. It was actually at that to make a change, do something different, and sort of going back and forth one weekend. Do I go join this crazy startup Freestar and 2 young kids at the time, or do I go take this yoga company public? I had an opportunity. Going back and forth, and with the young family, decided to go try the IPO thing. I was going to scratch that itch. So went and did the first boutique fitness IPO, helped run that for a couple of years. It was a roll-up of yoga studios where I was general counsel, but running corp dev, and literally flying all around the country, taking yoga class, convincing yoga studio owners to sell me their studio. So bought 21 yoga studios in about 14 months, and unfortunately, stock price just didn't really cooperate on that one, and we ended up pausing M&A. Happened to reconnect with the Freestar founders then after they had really executed on everything they said they were going to do, and had the chance to jump on board here just over a year ago. And it's been a pretty amazing ride since then.
So what is it about going being trained as a lawyer, practicing law, how does that help you in your current position?
In all honesty, I think law school and the practice of law, the best thing it does is sort of teach you how to think. It's a very critical thinking practice. And my particular experience on the business side and M&A, where you're doing diligence on all sorts of different companies, I got to see hundreds of different businesses, in a quick, fairly quick time frame, but you had to go deep on them to understand the business model and do the diligence, understand the risks and those things, and frankly, identify maybe the challenges they had or what are potential risks in the future. It gives you the chance to learn a lot from businesses you didn't spend a lot of time in. So I'm very grateful for the chance that I saw so many different business models, different management teams, and even the culture. You can pick up on that pretty quickly throughout that. So that was one of the best trainings from ultimately transitioning to a more pure business role long-term. And then just in general, over the years, whenever you're negotiating something, you think about it from both the business and the legal side. You're doing sort of double duty during the negotiation and making sure you're being thoughtful versus here's the business points, now let's send it over to the lawyer to go fight about things. You can be a little more efficient that way. So in hindsight, it's been a very, very good mix of things for me.
Okay. All right. And then on a similar vein, can you share an experience you had maybe early on as a young man or young boy that still influences how you approach business today?
Interesting. I guess it's the willingness to wear a lot of different hats. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and my dad was a dentist, but also loved to do woodworking, carpentry, and things. And it's my first job. I was a carpenter, helping build a house he was building, and then he and I wired that house. And I did all sorts of construction jobs. I was also a baker and built decks and was a pool boy and all sorts of things. So it's the willingness to just sort of dive into anything. Taught the LSAT class in college. And so I think sort of through formative years, it was the willingness to sort of just try anything and get your hands dirty, really dig in and understand something. And you'll figure out quickly whether you're good or bad at it or whether you enjoy it or not. But I think that process of continual learning and digging in has, I think, served me pretty well. And sort of a belief from my parents. My mom did a number of different things as well, from consulting to various agricultural things, built things, just seeing sort of that entrepreneurial spirit to just go try stuff really stuck with me.
Okay. All right. Now, you mentioned earlier before we began that you asked you about what type of advice you give people. So could you share that when you're working with your staff and encouraging the culture in the company?
Sure. Culture is a very big thing to me. I've seen it go really well and honestly poorly probably more times than really well. And I think if you get it really ingrained and defined clearly, so, the values aren't just something that are hanging on your wall, but something that people are making decisions based upon, you can instill a level of trust and the willingness to know that people are going to do the right thing. We also talk about celebrating failure a lot, where if you fail but did it in alignment with our values and trying to do it at the best purpose of the company, you're never going to get in trouble. And that's something that we talk about, and we've got some really good examples of that. And I think empowering people with the belief that they're supposed to go do things, some guiding principles, I think is really, really important. I also believe that if you take care of your customer, you take care of your employees, a lot of the other things will take care of themselves. So we focus heavily on the customer service side of things, making sure, obviously, our technology is world-class, but our customer service is even better. I think that's important. And something that gets lost in a world where a lot of things have become, how do we automate this? Or how do we streamline this? Or how do we send something to a chatbot? Both these and customers. So I think that human element of things is really, really important. And I always tell folks to focus on that and build those real relationships.
Yes. Okay. So you brings to my mind a little saying or story I had with a client where when he was young, his father told him, look, I have no problem if you aim high and miss it, but I have a serious problem if you aim low and make it.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, so, and that's a very good attitude, because then that encourages people to try things, experiment and move, and they don't get penalized when they fail or make mistakes.
Yeah, and there's a story we've told several times over the course of the last couple of years. One of the very early employees at Freestar, who's here, and I actually had the chance to work with him years ago at a different company, just an amazing guy. But shut that down and cost a very young company potential revenue about $250,000. This was early days. And certainly everybody was sort of shaking their heads, A, amazed that you could do that to Google, but B, like, wow, that's a pretty huge impact on the business. But he did it for the right reasons. And just this past summer, I think he had his 3-year anniversary. We do a couple times a year, even though we're remote, we fly the whole company in to make sure people do have that personal relationship. So we're up in northern Arizona, up in the mountains, and we had a little offsite for his 3-year anniversary. He's a big Packers fan. Don't hold that against him. Got him a jersey on the back that says $250,000 to celebrate his $250,000 mistake years ago that was done with the right intentions. So it's little things like that that, you know, in the moment they're very serious. When you can look back on them and kind of celebrate them and show if things are done with the right intentions, it's a good thing. So we try to really instill that whenever we can.
Okay. All right. So what does success look like for Kurt Donnell?
Well, there's various versions of that. There's the business success. One of the things that I'm most proud of is honestly the team we put together. We hired almost 30 people. We hired 30 people into a team of almost 50 last year. And to a person, everybody is genuinely kind, hardworking, and super intelligent. We didn't miss at all last year, and that's probably the thing I'm the most proud of. We had another year of over 50% growth, and you know that's even actually accelerated here in 2020. But it's the people side of things that's most important to me. On the personal side, it's certainly my wife and kids. You know, if there's any benefit of this whole crazy situation, it's been very nice to spend a little time reconnecting with them and seeing the wonderful people. I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. Just the wonderful little people they're becoming, and having a moment to spend some extra time with them has been very fulfilling for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of leads into some other COVID-19 type of questions. So are you seeing any increased activity to further harden your connections for sensitive data and sensitive work, or is it you kind of rolling with it?
I don't think it's changed a lot from a data perspective. I do think customer relationships, we've gotten a little closer with some customers, I think, just a little more communication when things are kind of moving along nice and smoothly. People aren't worried about it, and it's times of crisis. Everybody kind of looks in the mirror a little bit, and it's like, oh, and sort of checking out everything around them. So I think we've had the opportunity to connect with people. We've started sharing more information more regularly, just probably there's more to share, or reassuring people that what you're seeing is normal. So I think it's helped the relationship side of the business. I do think we're lucky opportunity to come out of this stronger from a hiring standpoint, and even potentially acquisitions. Unfortunately, there's probably going to be some companies that don't make it through as well. So we may have the chance to go through acquisition, hiring, all of those things as a result of this. So trying to stay positive here and hopefully, you know, be a positive light in saying that there's jobs open.
Okay. All right. How reliant are you on the technology supply chain? Is that pretty much independent of what you're doing?
Yeah, almost everything we do is in the cloud, so we don't really have certainly any hardware issues. You know, to date we're on Google Cloud Platform. They're fairly infinitely scalable and have not had any issues. We certainly have seen a big increase in volume from what I mentioned earlier, a lot of people being online, where just the sheer volume of advertising inventory has gone up like crazy. And so, you know, things like data costs have increased, but we haven't had any issues from a true sort of supply chain standpoint.
Okay. So now, what are you doing, or what have you put in place to assure that everybody is fully engaged in what's going on a day-to-day basis? Your employees, I mean.
Yeah, we have a very transparent culture and sort of constant communication. I would say every month we have an all-hands meeting, and we've certainly continued doing those. We've always had, like I said, 60-ish or some more remote folks. We've always had video with those. What we have added, though, is a lot more weekly sort of team things. Every Thursday we do a team virtual happy hour. We had a hosted trivia. We did charades. We had Yappy Hour where people brought their pets on. Any number of things like that. We've had virtual speakers. We had Tony Robbins, top female speaker, come on and talk to us a couple weeks ago. We got a couple more of those planned. We're working on some charitable things that we can help support as a group. And honestly, I realized a little bit as a leader, I probably wasn't supporting our virtual folks enough by doing that. I've personally done just Q&As with every one of our group, just kind of office hours, sitting down, ask anything, work-related, life-related, anything. And it's been really nice. A little extra time to focus on some folks that I don't see all the time has been very beneficial and something that I think we'll all take out of this.
Yeah. And that's what I've been hearing a lot too, is that there's a lot more communication now and empathy, and everybody thinks that's a great thing. And what I'm curious is, what would you do to change your behavior so you would continue that, to embody that into the way you do it on a day-to-day basis, 6 months, 9 months, a year from now?
Absolutely. We've done a good job. Like I said, we get the company together a couple times a year live and do a lot of good team building things. Then I had not really thought about the team building you can do virtually, or as much of that. I mean, we do our meetings, and certainly people have their team meetings regularly, but the more, I guess, fun, if you're in the office, you can all go to happy hour. I'd never really thought about virtual happy hour. It's fantastic. And we've had the hosted trivia the other night where folks were on cross-departmental teams, and you'd answer the question, then you'd have a minute or two to just chat with people you don't normally see. There's no reason we won't keep doing that, every week or every other week, the rest of the time throughout the year. And that little stuff keep people a little more connected and willingness to share. I've got this theory in life that once you've had a beer with somebody, it's hard to be mad at them. And there's that personal reaction where you're going to take whatever they said over a Slack or an email and read it the right way. Just like, Jim's asking me a question versus like, what does he need from me? And I think if we can create those connection points virtually throughout the year, there's going to be better collaboration.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time over the years back and forth across the Pacific working in Asia. And one of the big things, differences that I saw there is that there's a lot of socializing with management and workers after hours, which doesn't happen here at all. Work stops, everybody goes out and has a good time, and you talk, and you don't talk about work. Talk about families, hobbies, etc. And so you build those connections, and it makes for a stronger team.
I agree, and even in Slack, which is so we've added a couple channels where sort of people celebrate whether it's a passion or there's a question of the day. One of our women in our onboarding team puts up, and you just find out these interesting little tidbits about people, or see a picture of their dog or the painting or whatever they smoked on the grill the weekend before, or all these things where you kind of get to know people on a little deeper, more personal level, which sounds strange that it's happening in a virtual way, but people have kind of let you into their homes a little bit more of their personal life because there's less separation between the two. So I think what you just said makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and if we can engender that in, and especially once business restarts and we go back to where we were working before, we need to continue those type of practices. So let's see. All right. So the other question, or what we've noticed here, is that people think this is an optimal time now to push ahead with projects associated with artificial intelligence, data analysis, RPAs. So what are your thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, we've built a number of tools from a testing standpoint to make sure we're optimizing the revenue for publishers, and are increasingly building in sort of the machine learning and AI element of that. We've got a dedicated yield management team, which historically has been doing a lot of that in more manual fashion. Keep giving them tools to automate that and make that easier for them. Ideally, over time, some level of that will be done just machine learning, where the yield managers can kind of be the cherry on top of that, with some of the basic stuff more done in automated fashion. So definitely something we're spending a lot of time on and building out increasingly our data practice this year.
And I guess in marketing is the one area where this, people have been working in this type of realm for several years. And so the initial scare factor of how'd you know I was looking at that to send me this ad? Now we're kind of overcoming that. People are getting used to being specifically targeted for certain things based upon what they've searched for. But,
yeah, there's obviously been a backlash to that to a certain extent, and third-party cookie will go away. I don't think we'll ever get away from targeting. We've been celebrating that to advertisers too much, and in all honesty, it does work. And as a user, I think there's maybe a level of creepiness. I've got sort of in my life a creepiness convenience scale of above or below some point it's okay and not okay. Like when Google pops up an alert that your flight leaves in 2 hours and there's traffic, you should probably get on the road now. Like, kind of creepy that it knows that, but it's also really convenient. And I think ads can be the same way. I'd much rather be looking at ads that are relevant to me. Maybe it doesn't need to be one-to-one targeting, that it knows I left this pair of shoes in a cart someplace, but the fact that it knows that I'm in the market for running shoes or a car or something is a lot more useful for me than if it's advertising a purse to me. That's not terribly useful. So I think some level of targeting and advertising that's much more relevant is a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, so what are you doing from a strategic position now, or thinking to planning for a return to normal operations, or quote unquote normal operations?
Sure. I mean, we thankfully haven't been terribly impacted. It certainly probably put us a month or two behind our plan, just given the rates for advertising have fallen so dramatically this year, but volumes kind of offset that. So not that it's been business as usual per se. We certainly hit the pause button a little bit on hiring, but we've been pushing forward on all the projects. From a growth standpoint, we certainly have a lot of open field ahead of us and more of the same for increasingly bigger clients. So that's great. Our business development pipeline, if anything, is actually sped up probably a little bit because of this, as unfortunately companies have had to make some tough decisions and lay people off. The performance fee-based managed service starts to look pretty good. So I think we're well positioned from that standpoint. We've got some new products coming out, basically offering our same service for app developers as well. The app monetization world is 3 or 4 years kind of behind what has happened on desktop and mobile web. So some solutions we're rolling out there in Q2 that we're really, I guess, in Q2 at this point, we're rolling out this quarter that I'm pretty excited about, that I think could be really big drivers for our business. And then a little bit of a focus on e-commerce sites too. We brought on JCPenney as a client last year. We've sort of taken over everything for them. Certainly Amazon, Walmart, Target have done a very nice job building an ad business around an e-commerce business, and we think we can help a lot of other.
Now, other than COVID-19 and the impact it's had on disrupting everything, what are your top 3 concerns as a CEO?
I think it's managing culture through growth. That's certainly one of those. We're at a tipping point where we just crossed 50 employees. I think when you go from 50 to 100 employees, that's a pretty pivotal time in a business, and making sure you go from a time where everybody knew each other pretty well to, most of the people, not all the people, and making sure that, the values are really being instilled in everybody from day one, and that you've got that human relationship and connection across everybody. I think that's a big one. I think anytime you're managing a fast growing business, I think there's the 50 to 100 employee kind of chasm. I think there's a $50 million to $100 million business chasm where you often have $100 million problems and $50 million to solve them. Can be a difficult challenge. So both people and those revenue growth things are very top of mind for me. And then what was the third challenge for me? I think it's just always staying out in front of the technology curve. Our industry, and part of what I love about it, is that it changes every 3 months or 6 months, and somewhat unexpectedly at times. I mean, we knew that there was a change to third-party cookies coming, and Google, Firefox and Safari had just taken them away in the last 12 to 18 months. Google is maybe a little kinder, perhaps because they have a giant ad business, but gave a 2-year horizon to that. A couple months ago they announced that, but we as an industry have to figure out something over now the next 18 or so months of what does the world look like post-cookie, and we've all got to work together to do that. So I think always staying out in front of whatever those changes are going to be is probably the third thing that, I don't know if keeps me up at night is the right thing to say, but sort of.
Okay, great. Okay, so now, what is the market competition look like for Freestar? How many competitors do you have for what you do?
Sure, we're in an interesting spot where there's a lot of companies that do help publishers monetize their websites as a managed service. I think we're in a little bit of a different spot because of our focus on mid-sized to enterprise publishers versus a little bit longer tail publishers or more self-serve options, where there's some tools that you can do. Technology we implement, basis of our business, is something called header bidding, which is essentially what allows a unified auction to bid on an individual advertising impression at a time. It used to be a waterfall where you had to send it to one bidder with a floor price. If they didn't do it, the next person, the next person, the next person. And 4 or 5 years ago, was technology that came out, which basically unified that and made it a real-time auction. So there's a lot of folks at this point in time that can help you set that up. But our niche, as I've said, or at least our target focus, kind of mid-size and enterprise publishers, is a bit different. So you could say that we have 40 different competitors, or really 1 or 2. It sort of depends on how you define the market.
Okay. All right. So when you start talking to your clients, what is the most important question they should be asking of you when they consider coming to Freestar for help?
I mean, what are the things that you think you can do to help optimize the yield on my site? Ultimately, that's what we're here to do, is be monetization experts and help them very thoughtfully increase the revenue. And it's not just jam an extra ad unit on the page. It's, let's think about layouts here, potentially think about what different user bases are doing in different parts of the sites, different interactions. Where do we have high viewability on ads, or maybe an ad refresh makes sense? And so I think it's a lot kind of about the ad footprint on the page, how users are going to interact with that. Ultimately, yield management is the biggest part. Sort of, what is my customer service going to look like? Are you paying attention to all the time? Or, well, it's never set it and forget it from our side. Can it almost be set it and forget it from their standpoint, where they log into the dashboard, see everything's good, and get a check at the end of the month? I think that's ideally the goal for a lot of these publishers that want to really focus just on the content side.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, if you just now thinking about if you had to start Freestar over from scratch, what would you do differently today, or what would you continue doing the same?
I wasn't here for the first couple years, but I was following along closely enough. I think, and I can't say that you shouldn't have done it, I think any startup chases shiny objects along the way. And it's easy to get kind of diverted, in something that I, just having seen a lot of businesses, believe in, is you should find the thing that you can be the best at and go be the best at that. Don't try to do everything for everybody. Don't try to boil the ocean. Once you've really nailed your one niche, then you can kind of go one swim lane over and do that next thing that's adjacent, but don't try to be everything to everybody. And I think it's easy to do that, particularly when you're hustling and payroll's on a credit card, and you're like, I can make a buck here if I go do this and do that. So it's a lot easier said than done to sort of stay the course or figure out what those things are. And often you have to make the mistakes of chasing some shiny objects to figure out what that thing is that is your niche. But I would say try to keep a relatively narrow focus as soon as you can, and you've identified something where you can go win.
Okay. All right. Now, thinking back to the Forrester Roundtable I was participating in last week, they were talking about a COVID-19 discount that people are now demanding of their suppliers, and also on the opposite side, maybe 20%, because everybody's in the same boat. And so what do you see about, or what are your feelings about applying a discount now to as companies come back online?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in a revenue share model, so we win and lose with the publisher, and so the pain that they're feeling, we share in that to a certain extent. Obviously, lesser than they do, given the revenue shares significantly in their favor. I will say we have gone to certain vendors and had some discussions ourselves, partly just the way that inventory works and unfilled impressions versus filled impressions that maybe are a nuance to our business. I think we are going to fundamentally see pricing change in certain ways. I think a lot of companies that were, I don't want to say fast and loose, but were certainly comfortable, weren't sharpening their pencil in every possible way that they could. And probably there's 5% here and 5% there that they should have been looking at in the past and just weren't. And so I do think that there will be a lot of that happening when people are going back and renegotiating, not because necessarily it's a COVID discount in and of itself. It's that it probably should have been what the pricing was beforehand. People just weren't going to do the work because things were profitable enough that everybody was just happy. And maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it, but that's my guess, versus it being just everything gets hacked 20%.
Well, I guess it also depends on the nature of your business. If you were a consultant and you're delivering consulting services, you probably would not reduce your rates. But if you're a trucking company and you're trying to restart the supply chain, you're probably going to reduce it down just so you can get the business flowing again.
Yeah, I think there will certainly be that in the competition to who's going to get fired up as quickly as possible and all of those things. I think we're going to see that. I do think we're going to come out of this in many fundamentally changed ways. I'm pretty glad I don't own a lot of commercial office real estate right now. I think that market's going to change pretty significantly over the next few years. I think even e-commerce is going to change, where there's a lot of things that people didn't necessarily buy online. To use the joke, this whole thing, I don't think loads of people are buying toilet paper online up until the past month and a half. Some portion of people are going to just realize that it's easy, and we'll continue doing that. So I think there's going to be buying patterns that change. We started ordering groceries, or at least the pickup groceries, that we'll probably do a lot more. And we've talked about it in the past, doing that we just hadn't.
Yeah.
It saves us an hour, to just do that. And so I think there's going to be a lot of fundamental shifts, and that will breed a lot of innovation in certain ways. I think anytime there's a crisis, things change and great things come out of it. If you look at all the companies that came out of the last great recession, it's pretty astonishing.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up an interesting point about commercial properties, because that's something that now companies are realizing, hey, work from home is working out pretty well. We don't need all this office space. And so companies that were planning to move are deciding, okay, we're not going to move now. We don't need to expand here. So there's all this stuff they've been building is going to be tough. And real estate investors are going to probably be hurting until they can find more companies that fill it in.
Yeah, I think the office sector is going to be in a tough spot. And even some ancillary things, I was talking to somebody earlier who had a family member that was in the office furniture space. Even that, I mean, just the trickle down effect. And, I look around this place and whiteboard sales and, random things like that. There's going to be so many ancillary impacts that, are unfortunate, but people are resilient and will figure out ways to survive. And if it is a work from home culture, I'm sure it'll shift to all the things that you need in your home office that you didn't realize you need. And, I need a better office chair at home. I know that. I'm using a pretty crappy one right now. My back hurts because of it. So I'll be probably investing in a better home office chair here soon.
You might be investing in a home whiteboard too.
There we go.
Okay. Well, Kurt, it's been wonderful talking with you this evening. So how can people get in touch with you to learn more about you and Freestar?
Yeah. Absolutely. So Freestar, we tend to share a decent amount of content on LinkedIn. So certainly give us a follow there. And I'm happy to chat or help anybody I can. Feel free to shoot me an email. It's Kurt.Donnell at Freestar.com, Kurt.Donnell at Freestar.com.
Okay, well, wonderful. Okay, Kurt, thank you so much for your time tonight. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Business Performance Podcast with your business coach, Henry Schneider. For more episodes and business strategies, please visit welcome.ppqc.net/blog. That's www.welcome.ppqc.net/blog. And remember to subscribe so you can get the latest episodes. Thank you.